What's up guys, Ruppy here bringing you the team analysis video for my Olivine Beacons for the Grand Pokemon League, the draft format league hosted by the Ion Pokemon League and the Ion Game Corner. You can tell it's been a while since I've gotten to do that, because I kind of slipped up there a bit. In any event, it is GPL time once again. We are in the spring season of 2017, and before we get started, I have a few things I would like to clarify in regards to this particular league. First off, yes, I did say team analysis, not draft analysis, and that was intentional, actually. See, I haven't gotten a chance to really explain this yet, I don't feel, but the Grand Pokemon League operates quite differently from a lot of other draft format leagues out there. The initial season we had, which was the 2016 spring season, we got to draft Mons, just like any other draft. But from there, basically, it operates sort of like an actual sports league would. Every Pokemon has a point value assigned to it based on where you drafted it initially, and then once we hit the off season, if their contract is up, then you lose them, and you have to fill the void by bidding on free agent Pokemon to get them back. So that is what separates the Grand Pokemon League from other leagues, and that's why I said team analysis, because technically the team I have was not actually drafted, technically. As far as the GPL itself is concerned in regards to my Olivine Beacons, you might remember that for a period of time, we kind of had some videos going, and then they kind of fell off the face of the earth. Here's what happened. Basically, that just boiled down to issues that I stated in my update video a little while back, as far as why the recordings as a whole stopped, and that includes the GPL. As far as how my Beacons did, in last year's spring season, we went 9-1, took our division pretty easily, and got a first round bye, and then proceeded to get knocked out in the semifinals by the Cerulean Celebes, which, it was a bit annoying, but that's unfortunately kind of become the MO associated with me, and one I'm personally getting a little sick of. That no matter the draft format league, no matter the level of competition associated with it, whether it be a little more laid back or a little more serious, I just can't seem to close the deal. It's getting a little old, and it's something I would very much like to change. There was another season as well, the fall season of the GPL, that kind of didn't get recorded at all. Probably for the best, because honestly, I did not approach that season in the best of ways. I ended up finishing that season with a record of 4-5. The first time in my entire draft format experience I have ever ended a season under 500. And that was actually my first losing season, technically, because most other seasons I've played, I've ended up having 1 or 2 losses in the regular season, maybe, and then falling short in the playoffs. Or ended up being undefeated, and then the league kind of ended up dying out, so we don't technically know how it would have ended. But that did not exactly go according to plan. I finished last in my division, and somehow I still almost made playoffs despite that. I have no idea how that happened. But I am a little embarrassed about it, just because looking back at the team I had last season, I really didn't have any sort of plan. I just kind of approached using stuff that worked for me in the spring season last year of GPL, as well as some things that worked for me in the PTGT, which was just wrapping up at that point, and just kind of filled any other holes with what I thought would work. Ultimately, it ended up in a team that had no real synergy whatsoever, and I barely even had any walls. It was mostly offensive-oriented things that really didn't cover each other. They were kind of just out for their own interests, and it did not go very well at all. So, my idea for the GPL as we hit the 2017 spring season was basically a complete restructuring. There were only 2 Mons from my fall season that I kept. All the rest I let go in favor of new Mons to basically, as opposed to what I'm doing with the A-Drive Army Battle League, which is kind of a rain offense that doesn't require rain kind of strategy, maybe kind of a rain, more of a rain balance that doesn't necessarily need rain to function, but does just as well under rain. For the GPL, I basically decided to go back to my roots, what basically made me a force to be reckoned with in the 2016 spring season, which was basically bulky things that can just tank hits and fire back just as hard. Now, this is going to be a bit of an interesting season, and it might be a bit disheartening for me. Jury's still out on that. I don't really know how to feel about it, to be perfectly honest, and I don't mean that as any sort of insult to anyone who may be watching. But we had a lot of teams drop out from the league for one reason or another heading into this season. So, as it stands, there are only a total of 6 teams, counting my Olivine Beacons. And out of those, only 2 of them, myself and the new team to the league this season, the Canalave Geologists, are singles format. The other 4 that stuck around, the Anastar Aura, the Lavender Town Spectres, the Pewter City Paragons, who were the champions of the fall season, and a team that was new last season in the Snowpoint Avalanches, even though they primarily ran a sand offense. No idea how that worked. They all decided to go with doubles format. So at least half of my game, basically how the schedule's going to operate is we're all going to play each other at least twice. Not sure. I think it's the top 4 teams are going to end up going on to a playoff scenario. I'm still trying to figure that one out, but basically as long as I can find a way to keep winning, then I guess it won't really be too big of an issue how that plays out now, will it? Easier said than done, but I've got a lot of faith in this team I've put together. So let's go ahead and get into them, shall we? Any other intricacies involving the GPL and how things are going this season, I'll probably address them as they come up in the weeks to come. So, as I said, there are 2 Mons from my fall season team that are returning. And I'll go ahead and put both of them on screen right now. One of them, of course, being my team captain, Victini. In my last season with this Pokemon under contract. And needless to say, Victini is kind of out for blood this season. Granted, a lot of the things it would have loved to take on are not present at the moment. But for 2 straight seasons, Victini has been a menace in terms of kills, even with a losing record last season. And 2 seasons in a row, it's kind of gotten the shaft as far as being considered an MVP is concerned. So Victini is hoping for a return to form, especially with me going back to my roots, to try and secure MVP rights once and for all on its way out the door, because I'm not sure if I'll pick Victini back up if we end up doing a fall season as well, which that one might not even happen depending on overall interest. We'll see how that one goes. But Victini would not mind basically finally securing MVP rights if at all possible. The other mine you see on the screen that I kept from my fall season team is Galvantula. Now, those of you who have seen the PTGT know why I love Galvantula and what it brings to the team. It was kind of the reason why I picked it for my, as a PTGT crossover to my GPL team for the fall season. That didn't quite work out. Although, I will admit, Galvantula had an uncanny ability last season to kind of hacks things to death. I have no idea how it happened. I guess Galvantula was just that bound and determined to, I don't know, maybe prove that it was the bug that deserved to be on my team over Yanmega, because there was a part of the season where I was regretting not trying to go after Yanmega again. But I think Galvantula works really well with the team I've put together this season. Being able to set up Sticky Web, since I am running a bulkier offensive team, to be able to slow things down, Thunder Wave things. Obviously, it hits pretty hard, despite being relatively frail. I think Galvantula is going to do some good things for me this season. Now, let's get on to all the new toys I get to play with as my Olivine Beacons seek to finally claim the GPL title as our own. Starting with Garchomp. This is a Pokemon I had on my team in another draft format league called the NCDL that unfortunately fell apart like 3 or 4 weeks in, sadly. But life sometimes gets in the way, I understand it. But Garchomp brings a nice little offensive presence here. It can be run a bit bulky. Obviously, I have access to its Mega because of how the GPL operates. You are not form locked in this league. So if you have a Pokemon, you have every form available to it if you see fit. I can set up Stealth Rocks with this Mon. I can just obviously run it as an offensive wrecking machine, as one might expect. If I really wanted to be that guy, I could potentially maybe turn some sand offense on its head with, Basically, Garchomp gives me a lot of options I can potentially run from both an offensive and a defensive standpoint. It covers my Dragon type for my team, which is definitely nice to have. Being able to hit things with really hard Earthquakes is definitely nice. It makes a phenomenal Choice Scarfer. There are a lot of things I can do with Garchomp, so I'm quite happy to have it on the team. Next up, I believe I'm the only person that actually went this route. I am probably the only person in the league, to my knowledge, that actually grabbed an Ultra Beast. And I probably picked the most annoying one to grab. Celesteela. I'm sure there are a lot of people who are familiar by now that Celesteela is a top draft pick in most draft format leagues for obvious reasons. Basically, this thing does a lot. It's got very good defenses. It's not bad offensively from both ends. This thing is basically one giant pain in the ass to take down. And if you run it offensively, if you don't find a way to overcome it, it can eventually end up getting out of hand too with the beast boosts. Steel Flying is not bad, and the fact that it has grass coverage on top of it also works to its advantage. And making up a Dragon Steel Fairy Core with this Steel type, in addition to Garchomp as my Dragon type, is definitely a threat worth keeping an eye on. The next mon I ended up taking, I decided to grab a Water type to join Victini in making a Fire Water Grass Core. And what better Water type to take than Slowbro? Yes, it is a second Psychic type as well, joining Victini in that regard. But I really love Slowbro in Draft Format League, in all honesty. It may not well, it has a lot more versatility than a lot of people will give it credit for. Even if mostly the best things it is capable of doing are Water Stab, Psychic Stab, healing off damage, maybe doing Calm Mind. It can definitely run a pure defensive set. It has some versatility in its offensive options if you really look hard enough. It's just its bread and butter sets always seem to work the best, and it's hard to blame someone for it if that's the route they take, because regular Slowbro gets Regenerator, Mega Slowbro has Shell Armor, which means you can't hit it with a critical hit unless you happen to have a Mold Breaker Mon. And considering I have both at my disposal, and Slowbro is a really nasty physical wall as it is, and can even become a nasty special wall as well with enough Calm Minds under its belt, Slowbro definitely brings another annoying presence to the team, and joining Celesteela in that regard, I think Slowbro could definitely be a mon that causes a lot of trouble this season for opponents. Now, at this point, I wanted to finish up my Dragon Steel Fairy Core, and there was one fairy in particular that I have taken a bit of a liking to, as far as using in terms of not so much draft format, but just in general, and that is Tapu Fini. Yep, one of the Tapus at my disposal. I am aware it's a second Water type, but I don't think that's too much of a concern, just because Fini's just a great all-around defensive Pokemon, and it has a number of options it can toy around with. Obviously, I can toy around with Water Stab, though I shouldn't rely on Skull Burns unless my opponent happens to be a Flying Mon, a Levitator, or if Misty Terrain is gone. Speaking of which, the ability to basically instantly spawn Misty Terrain on the field is a definite benefit for my team, especially with all of the doubles battles I'll end up having to do this season, since I have to play every team at least once, and 4 out of my 5 opponents are all doubles format. But basically, that prevents them from relying on more defensive-oriented options to deal with my team, because as long as Feeny gets up Misty Terrain, then status is not really much of a concern for my Mons. On top of that, it can also set up screens. It can defog hazards away, which is definitely nice. The ability to use Nature's Madness to be able to cut more bulky Mons down to size by reducing their HP by half is definitely beneficial to trying to open doors for some of my heavy hitters to knock down. I really like what Tapu Fini is going to bring to this team. Plus, you can never go wrong with Fairy Stab. The next Mon I decided to grab for this season is one I've been dying to use in draft format for quite some time, and I kind of blame Super Blah for this one, since it was part of the team he used to wreck everybody with, en route to being the Season 2 GBA champion, and that is Hariyama. Hariyama can be a bigger pain in the ass than people realize for a fighting type, because you can definitely run this thing Assault Vest, and it's got some good defenses to be able to make it work. It can definitely run a Guts set very nicely. Big Fat's a phenomenal ability it can also have to be able to tank hits. It has quite a few offensive options at its disposal. It's got a few different forms of priority as well, in the likes of Fake Out and even Bullet Punch. And this thing just hits hard in general. So, Hariyama definitely can take hits, and it definitely can function very well as a wall breaker too, depending on the right circumstances. Granted, given the team it's working with, I think it'll find itself in that position more often than not, which is definitely beneficial for it. Speaking of potential wall breakers that can easily function as tanks as well, that brings me to my next Mon, Snorlax. Probably the best definition of a Pokemon tank you can find. It's another thick fat Mon, which is definitely beneficial for any fire and ice types that I might encounter. On top of that, there is also the benefit of having immunity, so this Mon can't be toxic. And normal stab definitely will allow this thing to hit things hard with the likes of Return, maybe some Body Slam that gets to spread some paras around. I can run a Curse set if I want to. I could just run Rest and Sleep Talk to be able to heal off any damage and just keep Snorlax in the fight. I have found a few different toys I really like with Snorlax, and of course, Snorlium Z, just to hit stuff with a pulverizing pancake, is definitely an option that's on the table as well that I can't ignore, which would definitely be fun to pull off. But Snorlax is quite versatile in the options it has at its disposal from an offensive standpoint, and it is definitely a pain to take down, especially since it's got phenomenal special bulk on top of everything else. So, I think Snorlax really fits the idea of what I'm trying to do this season, to basically get back to my roots. The next Mon kind of steps away from that idea a little bit, but I wanted a faster offensive threat, and one that I could definitely use to try to play some mind games with people if the opportunity presents itself. So, I decided to grab Zoroark. Zoroark can be really irritating to face, depending on how you use it. Because this thing can be about as much of a mind game playing Pokemon as Ditto. Perhaps even more so, because where Ditto can just transform into your opponent's Mon, and you're leave them trying to figure out what it could come in on, and basically threaten them with setup, Zoroark can just come in, outspeed things. You're lulled into a false sense of security, because you don't know if the Mon you're facing is Zoroark, or if it's actually the mon that it says it is, and then the next thing you know, you're hit with an attack that kind of puts you behind the 8 ball by the time you realize, oh shit, that is actually Zoroark in disguise. Zoroark does have a few good offensive options at its disposal as well. It's got great dark-type stab it can use. Overall, I think I can have some fun trying to mess with people's heads with Zoroark. And the last member of my team, I kind of wanted to look towards the bulk option again, but I also really wanted to finish my Fire, Water, Grass core. And I knew the perfect mod I wanted to join Victini and Slowbro and Tapu Fini to really help basically create like the ultimate bulky draft format team, I suppose. So my last mon here is Serena. Now what I like about Serena is everything it brings to the team. It brings some nice bulk. It brings moves like Trop Kick, which can lower attacks, so I can temporarily remove the threat of opposing physical attackers, if played correctly. It has aromatherapy, so it functions very well as a cleric if my team needs one, if I'm not using Fini for a game, or if Misty Surge happens to fail me. It can rapid spin, so that takes some extra pressure off of Fini from a hazard removing standpoint, if opponents try to use hazards to wear me down. Serena is kind of a jack of all trades, and with an ability like Queenly Majesty that basically prevents opposing Pokemon from using priority against it, I think Serena is going to function very well in bringing this team together to hopefully give my Olivine Beacons the shot we've been looking for to basically get back to our roots, get back to form, and hopefully finally claim a league championship. So that is my team, and I really hope it's going to work out this season. It definitely looks like it will on paper, because this team comes together really nicely and poses a number of problems for opposing teams, whether it's singles or doubles we're playing. And I am definitely hoping to make sure you guys come along for the ride all the way this season. Hopefully nothing will happen this time, but I'm not making any promises, I'm not making any guarantees. I'm just sticking with what's going to work for me, and hopefully it'll work out. So that said, I thank you guys for watching this team analysis video for my Olivine Beacons for the 2017 spring season of the Grand Pokemon League. And I will see you guys next time. Take care.